and Melanie. Why don't you guys introduce the art agents?
Howdy.
Yeah, welcome everyone to the Art Agents. We are the Virginians, and this is the Quixotic Patrick Jones. We
Yes.
had to
Brilliant.
practice
I
that.
had to Google that word. Exceedingly idealistic, unrealistic, and impractical.
That's me. That's exactly
Okay.
me. And a Cade
Okay.
meet and a Cade meet voucher from me, from my Irish brethren. Yeah, today I'm going to be interviewed by the art agent Virginians, and we've gone across a couple of questions there, but you guys are also welcome to add questions in the chat. Ask me anything within reason. I was talking to my wife. She says, anything? I says, that's a question. That's a question. So I might have to do a new sound effect, like a wonk wonk. If someone asks a question that's inappropriate, I'll just wonk wonk it later. Or we could do a wonk wonk on screen. I don't know. But ask me anything, you know what I mean, art related or career related, anything like that.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit back now and be interviewed.
Okay. Well, one of the first questions I wrote down was how did you develop your style, like for your paintings?
How did I develop my style?
Yeah.
Well, I first of all, and there's a lot of shame in art. And I was just talking about this recently about everyone feeling ashamed. What's all this shame about? I don't understand it. I never thought that artists had to be ashamed of anything. So how did I develop my style? Well, I just copied other people. No, let's retract that a little bit. I didn't actually copy anyone except for Steve Ditko. But what I did was I looked at other artists' work that I really loved, and there was two in particular, Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta. And I said, I want to be like them. And then I realized that if I'm too much like them, I'm not like me. But if you just take two artists and you take a little bit from both and then add your own stuff, you're automatically different. You're automatically different. And then if you add four artists after that, then you're completely different. Now, there's resemblances. People often say, oh, Boris is a clone of Frank Frazetta. Apart from the subject matter, there's no similarity at all. If you took a portion of any of their paintings and took the fantasy element out and said, look at how this is painted, it's totally different technique. So the technique is completely miles apart. Boris could be doing fantasy or romantic covers, and you would go, he looks nothing like Frazetta. So they just share that commonality of fantasy. So that's another thing. I mean, have a look at, Chuck's work. He took two elements, stuck them together. He took fantasy and Western art and put them together. Brand new, absolutely brand new. Add his style in, brand new, brand new. So you just mix it up a little bit. Take a little bit of cake mix and yet another cake mix, stick them together. I'm trying for an analogy here. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
What kind of stuff were you drawing as a kid?
I love the way Rachel stopped the analogy.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah. What else?
I got a lot rattling around in
More,
here.
more. Hey, Patrick, let's hear word salad. Let's get back on track.
Oh, sorry.
No, I want you to do it. More interviews, more interview people should do that, I think. And these word salad people running off. Hey, come back, come back.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't know where you're going. We don't know where you're going. Come back
Yeah.
here.
She's the tether in this interview.
I
Tether.
that
What a brilliant,
I don't know
brilliant
about
word
that.
there, Melanie. That was the perfect word. You have you're arguing with someone and you walk away defeated and you go, I just thought of the perfect word there. And you just pulled it out, tether. That's great. Now, Rachel, sorry, have you forgotten your question?
I was just saying, what kind of like stuff were you drawing as a kid? Because I imagine you were like an art kid. You
I
were
was an art kid like mad.
okay.
I was drawing Disney cartoons. That was my first thing. I wanted to be a Disney artist until I worked for Disney. And then I never wanted to work for Disney again. Now, that didn't mean that I didn't love the Disney people. They were so nice. They were so nice to me. And I remember they did one thing, and it was a tiny little gesture. When I finished, I didn't work on their characters because I'd already been burnt by Warner Brothers, who asked me to do Foghorn Leghorn as a character. And I was art directed within a millimeter of exhaustion on how the beak looks, how the waddle looks. It was just at the end of the day,
So
just
tedious.
tie, I'll just tie my hands to yours and show me what you want. It was horrible. I don't like the word hatred. I think it's for children, but I disliked it so intensely that I went, Warner Brothers, never again. And I love Warner Brothers, but I don't want to work on IP that's not mine because it has become this thing now where it'll never change, and they've got no intention of changing it. Like if you could look back to Fred Moore at Disney, you would think who would ever mess with Mickey Mouse? And Fred Moore didn't like how Mickey Mouse was drawn because really, basically, Walt Disney designed Mickey Mouse, and he wasn't a great draftsperson. He was just adequate. And Fred Moore was a brilliant artist, and he didn't look like how Mickey looked, and he changed it. I mean, he changed it when he shouldn't have done. He changed it in the animation. And Walt Disney looked at the rushes. Back then, you turned the little drum like that, and you watched the animation. And Walt Disney said, when he saw Mickey had changed completely, he rewinded and he went, "Who drew this? Who drew Mickey Mouse like this?" And Fred said, "I did. Now these are the old days. If I wish they still existed." And Walt says, "This is how Mickey's going to be drawing from now on." Now imagine that today. It's almost impossible to imagine a corporate art director talking like that today. It's just not going to fly in the boardroom. And they know it, and they're terrified of the boardrooms. And that's one of the reasons why I got out of art, was because of art direction by committee. If you've never heard of art direction by committee, it basically means a committee, right away you can say there's the death of art, is going to come in and everyone's going to have a different opinion on what they like or dislike. And now you're a puppet on a string, and it can never be good. And so I wish for those days again, and that's why I encourage IP. And I think that's why concept art's not a bad idea, because nothing's been IP'd yet. So if you get into IP, or if you get into concept art, say Assassin's Creed, and it's just a script, you're free to design. But if you get into Assassin's Creed 2, that's the end of creativity, because you have to work with the characters already established. So things like that were the reasons I got out of commercial art, because I just couldn't work in that system anymore. But when you're a kid, you can do anything you want. And when I was a kid, I used to copy Disney cartoons. I wanted to be working for Disney. There was one particular cartoon called The Three Caballeros, and The Three Caballeros blew my mind, because back then, you guys are so lucky. You don't believe how lucky you are. Disney had a brilliant strategy. Whereas if you didn't see it in the movies, you may not see it again. So if you didn't go to the movies to see Snow White, you may not see it again. And so the box office was amazing. So, wins, Oscars galore. And if you're lucky, 5 years later, they re-release it. And you better see this, because you've only got 1.5 hours to watch something that may not happen again for another 10 years. It was an amazing strategy. And it was the same with television. You couldn't see a Disney movie on television. And then you could buy it on DVD or video. All that stuff came later. And that's when everyone got lucky. You go, "Oh, I can watch this anytime
I had the VHS tapes, and I would just replay Lion King over and over.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And my daughter was the same.
Yeah.
My daughter was the same. She just wore out the Beauty and the Beast, which
Yeah.
is basically, when you think about the Beauty and the Beast, it's coercive control. That's a really dangerous story. Kidnap the one you fancy if you're ugly, and you'll win around by imprisoning her. What kind of story is that?
Yeah. I thought the Beast was cool, but I didn't get it. I remember that was one where I was like, I didn't like any of the princess stuff.
Didn't you?
No. Oh, but you had a question about a digital art somewhere, didn't you?
About it. Well, so one of my questions was, what differences or advantages have arisen from the internet versus working in the arts before?
So much, so much. When there was no internet, it was brilliant, right? I know it seems strange to hear that. It was absolutely sensational. There was so much work. There was work everywhere. If you were good, there was. If you were even adequate, there was work everywhere. So when I started off, for instance, I came from Belfast, and basically the sky was that low. That's how you could poke your finger through a dark cloud. That's how the weather was most of the year. I remember crying about that to a Scotsman, and he turned to me and he says, "We had snow in July." I went, "Well, that beats me. Snow in July?"
Yeah.
So we had this constant cold weather. And for me, I've lost my train of thought. What am I talking about?
She asked you about digital.
Yeah, the difference between the before internet times and the after internet times.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So, am I ready for the old people song? So, so what happened was because of that weather, thank God you guys have taken track of this. Every photograph taken of every product that was outdoors had this horrible overcast sky. And so I really tapped into that. I walked around, I bought an airbrush. And with that airbrush, I was the king of the world. And I walked around in all the agencies and I didn't have a printer. I had nothing. I had holes in my shoes and I made all these business cards as cheap as you could because color cost and illustration cost. And so the cheapest you can get was like 50 for, just your name and your phone number. So I did that. But what I did is I put all 50 of them on a big card and I sprayed them all multicolors with an airbrush. And I went around all these ad agencies and I said, every one of these cards is individual. Every one of them is a work of art because every color is different. I showed
They're
two.
collectible.
They're collectible. I said, look, this one's different than that one. And that was the only way I could explain being poor and looking rich. And they went, wow, that's amazing. So that one thing, that one difference was enough for them to remember me. So leave something to remember them by. Make an impression. Just walk in there and drop your card and walk out. You may as well put it in the bin. Just drop it straight in the bin like that. So they remembered that. And I was a smiley kid. They used to call me Smiley. So I was a smiley kid, and that was a big bonus. I had these little things that I didn't know were already great things. I was a happy person. And so I went from agency to agency. And I remember halfway down the street, I was always having trouble with my shoes. The laces broke. And so I'm clippity clopping down the street. And I went down to tie the lace, and 25 of my business cards went flying out in a big rush like that. Because everything was a vortex. Everything was rain and hail and
Yeah.
snow. And some of them were starting to run because it was ink.
Yeah.
So I'd huddle them under my arm like this. But eventually I got to an agency that worked with Lockheed. I think I might have mentioned this because I talked to you
Yeah,
guys.
that's crazy.
Didn't I? Yeah,
Yeah.
and they wanted their big photographs. If you go into Lockheed, for instance, you go and you look and they have big laminated photographs of their aircrafts, and they had giant photographs, and everything was a horrible dark sky. And they said to me, I can't remember if it was the agency itself or they sent the Lockheed people out, but basically they came to my little studio, which was basically a bare room above my dad's shop. So I was lucky there. My dad had a shop and he had a room upstairs that he hadn't fixed yet.
So
Little sweet
how
shop.
old were you at the point where you were working for Lockheed Martin?
I think 19. I just left the
Okay.
Navy. I
So that
just
was like
left
your
the
first like big art job,
No, I was
I
working
guess.
before that. I was
Oh,
working
okay.
while I was the first big job, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Before this, when I was working, when I was in the Navy, I was drawing for a comic book, which was self-published by other people. It wasn't self-published by me. And if I hadn't told this story before, it was a nice story because I thought, how do I do this? I'm in Belfast, there's a war on, you walk into the city, half of it's rubble. And it really was back then. It was like Berlin. Half of it was rubble, and then you get to, where they rebuild it, and there's little news agents there. And I saw a comic book, and it was a black and white one, which was very unusual. Black and white and dry paper, very unusual. So it's basically like the inside of a novel. You go, where's the gloss? And I realized it was self-published, and I looked through it, and the artwork was good, but it wasn't spectacular, but it was incredibly interesting. And it was really joyous too. It didn't seem to be like Marvel. They were having fun in it. Marvel had fun, but it was kind of manufactured. And you were introduced by Saucy Sue, stuff you can't do today. So Saucy Sue comes on, she's all booby and stuff, and she says, welcome to the magazine. And she, introduces the artists in it and stuff. And she doesn't exist. One of the guys that invented her, and she used to get fan mail. Used to say, "Sue, are you free anytime? I really love how
Yeah.
you introduced the mag. Who's that? Who's that symbol? It's a cartoon. It's obviously a
Yeah.
cartoon, right?" But I guess they thought it was based on a real person. Anyway, it said if you want to submit to this magazine, if you think you're good enough, well, challenge, uh, submit your work to this address. And it said one something. Oh, I wish I saw the tip of my tongue. Anyway, it was in the Belfast City Centre, and I'm in the Belfast City Centre reading this. And I look through the window right across. I mean, how lucky am I? I looked through the big window of W.H. Smith's. If you're in the UK, you'll remember what that is. And I looked, what's the big news agents in America? Do you just have a place where you see news in every corner and there's a big store? Anything like that? You used to go and get your newspaper there?
I'm not even like.
I haven't held a newspaper in like
Yeah, newspapers
don't
are
even
just
remember.
they throw them on your driveway and then they rot in the rain and you're
Yeah.
angry.
Ah,
You're like,
that's
why are
right.
you leaving this out in
Mhm.
my yard?
See, this is one of the things I used to love about America, watching it on television. A kid get down the street in his bicycle throwing newspapers.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I would
It's
love
like
to do that. I would love to get down the street and throw newspapers because I used to deliver newspapers. I was actually quite an entrepreneur. We were
yeah, it
14.
sounds like it.
Yeah, we were 14. And I don't know how. I think, in fact, I remember we walked into the Belfast Telegraph, which was the big newspaper. At 14, two vagabonds, we walked into to it because we saw people delivering newspapers. And we walked into it and we said, um, can we deliver your newspapers? And they said, oh, you have to buy them. I says, we buy them? He says, you buy them for this price, and then you deliver them for that price. And I says, and we keep the money? And they says, that's how it works, yeah. I went, that's brilliant. I said, no, so how much? And so we had to work out how much we could buy and how many people would buy them off us. And we worked it out, and nobody delivered where we were because it was too dangerous. So the place I lived in, people only got their newspapers from the newsagents because people were too scared to come in and deliver them because it was a war zone. And we went bananas. We bought this many and we sold them immediately. We just walked around door, said, "You want to buy the Belfast Telegraph?" It's the day before it gets to the news agents. They went, "That's brilliant." We took it off.
Genius.
Yeah, that's wild.
So so before we know it, we had this load, and they would deliver it. We didn't have to go to the Belfast Telegraph now because we were so successful. They would dump it across. We didn't have a place. And he says, "Where would you like these delivered to?" And we didn't have anywhere. So we says, outside, outside the Irish dance hall, where the girls learn how to Irish dance. And so we would go to the Irish dance and we watch the girls Irish dancing. And at 5 o'clock, we'd go sit out the front, and then the Belfast Telegraph van would come by, and a guy would open the back doors, woof, and he'd throw out a big bill of newspapers.
What were you?
And
You're like 10?
we
Like,
14.
yeah, that's crazy. That's
But
good.
it was trouble though. We needed a
Yeah.
minder.
Yeah.
I remember going around once. First of all, we got attacked by a bunch of kids trying to steal them once. And then I remember this guy, we we give him the paper and he closed the door. And we said, you haven't paid us for it yet.
Yeah,
He
you
says,
just
pay for it
stole.
yourself.
I guess you lose some. You take some, you lose some.
Fast to business.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're off track. But yeah, so back to the story.
Yeah, we were
So
talking about
through-
pre-internet world versus today's world.
yeah,
Specifically in the art industry.
because I'm such a
Yeah.
talkaholic, I didn't finish the story.
No, I think
So
it's great.
because we went off track, so I was looking through the window and it says deliver to one something place, and I went, isn't that across the street? And it was. And so I bought the comic book, and I walked across the street. And at that point, what was I doing? I was working on the building site with my dad at 15. So I actually had more money than most kids, even though just pre that I had no money at all. So I used to see kids getting pocket money, and I went, that'd be great. We used to get so much pocket money, and it was so tiny, honestly. It was a little packet of, we called them midget gems. It was the cheapest thing in the shop. We go, can we have them? And we shared them like that. And we ate one at a time. We sucked the sugar off it until it lasted all day. So we had no money. And then at 15, all of a sudden, I had tons of money because I was also working in a nightclub collecting glasses right until 2 in the morning and stuff. It was child abuse. So I used to come home with my ears ringing. I couldn't hear because the band was so loud and I'm collecting glasses. Anyway, I'm off track. So I went across the road and I rang the bell and I said, I've got your comic book here, Zmog, and it says here, if you think you're good enough, can you show your stuff? And they said, yeah, have you got some stuff? I says, not with me, but I can bring it. He says, come on up. So I went up to the room and I talked to him about it and stuff. And I can't remember what happened or whether I drew something for him. But basically, I left that place with the commission for the front cover and the prime story for the magazine. And I thought that was easy, wasn't it? And that held me in good stead forever. If you don't go in and if you don't walk into your room and introduce yourself and say you can do something, you're a mile behind. But if you can walk into your room and say, I can do that, you're a mile in front. And that's all I had to do. And so when I joined the Navy, I would draw the comic strip because the Navy is a lot of downtime because you're just on the ocean. So in between my watches, like 8 till 4 watch I was on, from 4 to 12, for instance, I would just draw for 4 hours. And then 12 o'clock, I'd go back on the watch again. So things like that. And at every port, I would find the post office and send the original artwork back through the post. And that could be in Saudi Arabia, that could be in Tanzania, that could be anywhere. And you had to trust the post. And strangely, it always got through. It always got through.
Wow.
But you can imagine the angst of it.
Yeah.
So look how hard that was. But I mean, like that whole process, if you said, here's what you have to do, look how hard that was. If you said, here's what you have to do. But it just happened organically. And you have to just make that happen by being adventurous. So I was adventurous. There's how I got into art. And now it couldn't be easier and it couldn't be harder. Oh, you know what? I've forgotten to throw.
We got another question from the chat I could ask.
Well, remind me to come back to the Lockheed story then. Go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
well, you can continue.
That's still not finished. You know what was funny at the
Okay.
start? We thought, what if we have a downtime where there's nothing to talk about? You can't shut me up. Go ahead.
Oh, so you wanted to do the YouTube question?
Yes.
All right. So, once you have developed basic drawing skills, how would you recommend learning to add color, like growing from drawing into painting?
That is a brilliant question. That is a brilliant question, not often asked. Who asked that?
Vince.
Vince, that was a brilliant question, and it should be asked more often. I'm just going to bring something up on screen because I'm terrified of, doing what I did one time before, was expose my text records. Let's go over like this so that we have at least some images on screen to show. So there we go, and that'll block the screen off. So yeah, so Jeff Jones had the same problem. Jeff Jones was basically working in monochrome. If you don't know who Jeff Jones is, go look and find Jeff Jones. Just one of my favorite artists. And he actually expanded on what Frank Frazetta did. He designed more. Frank Frazetta was a great designer, and he designed even more. And I'm finding myself looking at Jeff Jones's book more often than Frank Frazetta's at the moment. Oh, wish I had it at hand there. But brilliant, brilliant artist. Became Jeffrey Catherine Jones. He changed his gender. Well, he half-assed it. He half changed and then decided it was a bad idea. So, he makes decisions. I always say there's no mistakes. That was kind of a mistake for him, and he admitted it. So, so when I used to talk to him on the internet just before his sad end, and he said to me, I called him Jeff, and somebody berated me for it. They says his name's Catherine. I says, well, I've talked to Jeff, and he says, call me Jeff. So I think he wanted to be Jeff back to Jeff again. So that's a different story for a different time. But Jeff said that he couldn't approach color. He was timid. He was frightened of color. So all his early book jackets are practically two color. They're practically just umbers. And that's a brilliant way to get into it. If you can work in umber and then add one color at a time, you can't lose. And I would add something else to that. Add an analogous color, meaning whatever color you're already working with. Let's say you're working with umbers and you wanted to add a red, add some of the umber into the red so that it's a muted umber red, and then add some of that umber into a blue so it's a muted umber blue, and you won't see the umber in it. It'll just be toned on. You could almost say it's an invisible weave. Oh God, everyone's talking about weaves at the minute, aren't they? It's an invisible weave through your colors. So analogous colors are basically muted. You look how beautiful my studio is here, even though everything is different colors. It's because there's a muted color scheme everywhere. And I've put that in place because that's the kind of color person I am. So the cabinet, for instance, is a very muted tone of oak. And so is the green on the wall. Everything's muted. There's nothing bright there. Even the lights are Edison bulbs. Do you see that? They've got an orange glow to them. Even the little banker's light over here, the green of it is in concert with the green on the wall. Things like that. So there's basically not many colors going on there. The only thing that's really ruining the mood, man, is that big red book there. And
So,
there's Zorn.
well, you gotta have
Of
it.
course.
And there's Zorn is ruining the mood, man. So
But
you
he's the
add,
one. His color palette's also one you could look up.
oh, it's gorgeous. Let's grab it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's
Hold
go
on.
and talk about color.
Let's go to Pedri's Cabinet of Curiosities. You know how that'll play out later.
Yeah,
Yeah, look at that. Oh my
yeah.
God.
He didn't use blue allegedly. It was red, yellow, black, and white.
Yeah, his palette is famous for being subdued. Look at the
Yeah.
look at the green in that face. You know, and all the better for it because no one else was doing that. Yeah, you know what drives me crazy? You buy an art book, and they always whoever curates the art books, let's find the worst of Andor's Zone. It's like common. I don't know
Oh
why they.
no.
I mean, this is brilliant technique, but
Oh yeah, I've studied that one.
yeah, it's brilliant technique. But am I
Yeah.
bored? I'm bored lifeless by the subject matter. I might be
Okay.
more. Let's paint an
Yeah,
old lady reading a newspaper. Oh, that's
yeah.
fantastic. Let's do that. What? But look
But
at the
what kind
red.
of exciting ones did he have? I mean,
Well, I love this. I love this
okay.
nude.
Oh yeah, I like that
Mhm.
one too.
I thought they were gorgeous, and he made
Yeah.
landscapes so beautiful. I mean, it was just. I mean, look at the sweep. Look at the sweep of this all the way around, and look at that beautiful covering on the sides. I bet that didn't exist. I bet he put that in to frame it and add more to the sparkle of it. So people go, I just copied the landscape. I bet he didn't. I bet the design was in there. But I thought his nudes were so innocent and wonderful. You know, look at that.
Yeah, those are
So,
nice.
so beautiful. And there was one in particular that was one of my favorites. I hope it's in here. I mean, look at that one. Anyone else is posing a nude. Look, he decides to choose in between poses. See that?
Yeah, that's
Not sure
cool.
about that knee. I think that knee's a bad tangent. Don't be afraid to knock back your heroes. You can learn from also what could they have done better.
Yeah,
But
things that
there's
were
one.
probably bothering them afterwards too. Like,
Oh,
why did I do
sure.
that?
For sure.
No one's supposed to notice that.
That's right. And you know, it was because his work was so loose, there would be no point to
Oh,
come
that
back.
one's cool.
That one here,
Yeah, yeah, I
actually,
like
Yeah, I
that
like that
one.
one too.
now
I
you could
haven't
call
seen
that
that.
yeah, you could call that fantasy art. I mean, that to me is reminiscent of the Brandywine artists and Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones, I know would have been a great fan of his because of the brushwork. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, so after when I stopped, not stopped, but when I started to branch out my tastes and look at the dusty stuff that I thought was boring when I was a kid and started to see things like Anders On and that the likes, I started to really get better and better because you can add anything. You can add the looseness of those brush strokes into it. So you can see it here with what you can do just with pencil. You can just think, if you think, here's a tip for everyone. If you can think of charcoal and pencil as paint, you're automatically drawing better and more painterly in your pencil drawings. So pencil, because it's such a fine point, is a real disaster area if you want to be expressive. It can still be done. If you're working automatic drawing, for instance, where you're just only drawing line, it looks amazing. But if you want to show style that has tone in it, then copying a photograph is a dead end. Whereas if you've got photographic reference like I have here, I'm going to spruik my course. I've got an online course where you can meet me every Saturday. It's on right now. At the bottom of the screen, there's a coupon code for 20% off all of my on-store online stuff, only for YouTube at the minute. So anyone watching this has got the chance to take 20% off. So my online course starts on Saturday, where I go through students' work and say, here's what if you want to know how to do that, here's how to do it. And we get to talk. You remember, guys, you remember me,
I've
how good
taken
it
it
was.
3 times.
How wonderful was it,
Yeah.
Rachel? And I don't mean wonderful from my end. How wonderful was it for us all to sit as artists and grow? Wasn't it really
Yeah.
nice?
I mean, the
Yes.
community that came out of it is really incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a
And the
lot of
talk,
really, yeah. Yeah, we all
yeah,
talk
and
to each other.
all talking to each other now on a little Discord channel, which comes with a course.
Yeah, I think they're right now drawing. There's like a little the Discord channel that Chuck started. They every
Oh
Monday
yeah.
they've been doing figure
Oh,
study.
that's right. Your
Yeah.
Monday's my Tuesday. Yes, I should be.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
going
you're
to miss it
ahead.
because we're the art agents. We're going to miss it. Uh, only once a month. I'm definitely going to come into it. But look at the just look at the painterly nature of that. How much can you take on would be another tip as well. How much can you take on and still tell a story? And it tells more of a story. How odd is that? It tells more of a story the more you take on. But you have to know what's in there to take it out. I tried to do style without knowing what was in there. I didn't know what the hell I was drawing. You know, I mean, if I was to try and copy this mass here like that, because that's what you do if you didn't know anything, it's going to get all out of whack and it's going to look like rocks. It's already on the precipice of looking like a rocky landscape right now, which is great because then you refocus your eyes and you go, that's a person. But if you do too much abstract and you don't know what to leave in and what to leave out, then it's not going to make any sense at all. You know, you can see here the triceps coming down to the common tendon, for instance. You can see the biceps and you can see the insertion of the deltoid, right? All technical stuff. But really, they're just lumps. And you can see the acromion process pinch there. Okay, so, you know, if you draw lots, I mean, I've been drawing all week. I've been drawing like nobody's watching. And that's another thing I would say. I'm at a point where I'm teaching classes and I go, and I'm getting, this happens, by the way. When you start off, you're frightened to show anything because it's not good enough. And then when you get established in your teaching classes, you get a little bit of fear of showing anything that's rough. And people go, oh, I can see errors in that. But that's the mileage. So I've been posting to give everyone a chance to look at, it's not magic. I've been posting my drawings that I've done over the week without erasing and just putting them straight up like that. And I'll look at them 2 seconds later and go, that arm could be fixed. But that's nothing to do with it. It's mileage. And all of that can be fixed in a final drawing. So I'm drawing like crazy. I drew yesterday a little character posed and contrapostal like that. And I turned it around 4 times like this and drew every one. And there were little 3-minute drawings. And it was a joy. And it was an absolute joy. And if you look at it, yeah, of course, you know, the eye's a little off. It doesn't matter, you know. If in the ballpark, it was pretty much close to perfect with a couple of tweaks. And only mileage can do that for you. You draw lots and lots and lots. And look how beautiful line is. Look how beautiful design is. If I could find the original reference for that, it doesn't belong to me. You could see just how much change is there. So in my course, I have my own models. And so I can show them, like Alana there will have to block that out, won't we? Things like that. But yeah, go ahead. Like I say, I'm a talkaholic.
Well, I mean, we got more questions from myself. I how has travel or the environment affected your art? Because you've gone all over the place from Ireland to London to Australia now. Has that had any effect on like developing your style and what you're doing as an artist?
Tremendously so. What shocked me was that Frank Frazetta never left America, as far as I know anyway. And yet he painted scenes where I believe he had spent time with the Bedouins in Petra, that the light was so perfect. So it proves that you don't have to. But if you're not Frank Frazetta, it's beneficial. So when I did go and have tea with the Bedouins in Petra, the light was different. I had never seen darkness like that in my life, because you go out in the middle of the desert and you're walking through caverns. And when the sun went down, you could not see that far in front of your face. And if you looked up, all you could see was the sky. That was it. And I remember going, you have to be out in the middle of here to see that. And then when you get up higher and you see the landscape lit by the moon, and only the moon, no city lights, it is spectacular. It's a fantasy world. It's light like that is totally uninterrupted by modern society. And it's different. It's just different. And even the heat and dust, it's different. And the shadows, yeah, and the shadows within it. But if you're in somewhere like America, you have that opportunity because you can come from New York or Seattle, let's say, for a real contrast. You can go from Seattle, where the rain never stops practically, and go down to Arizona, and you can see landscapes like Petra. But even then, the curve of the earth, that's a different kind of heat. It's a different kind of sunshine. It's amazing. So yeah, travel broadens the mind, broadens the soul, broadens the palate. It's everything. Travel, even if you just travel down the street, travel as much as you can if you're capable of it. Yeah, made huge differences to me.
That's awesome.
Also, I don't want to get political. And also, it made me realize that most people are good, no matter what you see in the news.
Mhm.
Most people are good. I've been all over the Middle East, all over the Far East. Everywhere I went, people were nice. Every single place, nice people. It's astonishing. So don't be depressed by the news. Empty vessels make the most noise. So the horrors are the ones screaming. Everyone's it's a nice, we're living in a nice world. Okay,
Is
there you
there
go.
anywhere you want to go that you haven't gone there yet? Anywhere on the bucket list?
Yeah, Vietnam would be nice. I don't know how I've missed that. And I remember someone asking Richard Attenborough, oh, David Attenborough, get those brothers mixed up. David Attenborough, what was the
Yeah, the
nicest place?
BBC guy. Yeah,
The BBC guy that does all the life on Earth and stuff. And he
yeah.
said, what was the most beautiful place on Earth that you ever visited? And he says, Bali in the 1960s. Now, I went to Bali and it wasn't in the 1960s. And I can see what he means that he had to say the 1960s. Because there's places in Bali that are just, get me out of here, where people
Mhm.
are trying to set you a t-shirt and a pair of shoes and a belt every 2 minutes you walk down the street, or every 30 seconds, actually. And there's only so many, I mean, I feel for them, but there's only so many t-shirts and belts and shoes that I can buy before I have my suitcase full. So I can, there's nothing more I could do. But once I went up into the mountains, it's unbelievable. It was just gorgeous. So I've never been to Vietnam. Very few places I haven't been. I'd love to go up to Montana in America.
Okay.
See
Yeah,
that because Steve's up there, so I have to visit
yeah,
Steve.
it's pretty up there. I've never been. That's somewhere I still want to go.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Montana. I've been up
Yeah.
so, I mean, I've been up to Utah, down to Arizona, up the Big Sur. The Big Sur was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how beautiful the Big Sur was, and I had never heard of the Big Sur. I knew of California, I knew of Los Angeles, I knew of all those places. But I had an agent in Los Angeles and she says, are you going driving? I says, yeah, I'm going to drive up to San Francisco. And she says, you're going to love the Big Sur. And I had never heard of it. And then I realized everyone's got to see the Big Sur. I was watching a movie
Like
the other day. Yeah, I was watching a movie because he's filming the big, like Tom Cruise movies and stuff there. And someone was driving across the bridge and I says, look, they're going up the Big Sur. Do you remember we parked on the other side of that bridge? And we did there's a big bridge you go across, and there was a little a part where you could park your car. And I was watching it on television. And I went, wow. And on television, it looked spectacular. On a widescreen, it looked like spectacular. But hold your breath for reality. It is beyond belief. So Utah was gorgeous. I
yeah.
was breathtaking by a lot of America.
Melanie went up to Washington earlier this year.
I think it
Oh
was
yeah, I saw
last
that.
year.
I
Yeah,
can't even.
yeah. My
Yeah,
uncle lives in Seattle. I went up to
yeah.
visit him. Went to Vancouver.
Oh,
Um,
Vancouver, so
but
beautiful.
I haven't done
No,
a lot of
which hold
traveling
on,
outside of that.
which Vancouver? Vancouver, America, or Vancouver, Canada?
Canada, the
All right, because there's
Vancouver,
two close
Canada.
together, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's really close to Seattle.
I'm gonna bet it was raining in Seattle when you were there.
It rained half of the week, yes,
Yes.
but thankfully the last half was beautiful.
Yeah. And Vancouver in Canada, what did you think of that?
So I wasn't expecting the city to look the way that it did, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's a
In which way?
very different style of built like architecture than what I'm used to seeing. It almost seemed futuristic
Oh
compared to
yeah,
what I'm used
Yeah,
so
to.
Richmond is very old.
oh, that's
So
right, you're
everything
Virginians.
next to our
Yeah,
city, what we
Richmond's
call
a
a city.
historical city.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You've got porches and verandas and all kinds of things, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love Vancouver. Did you go down? I assume you did down to the harbor and have a look at
Yeah,
the boats and the
the art
seafood.
center and the
Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool.
Did you walk around and up into the forest? There's a little forest across from the
Is
harbor.
that
You,
Stanley Park?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we did go to Stanley Park, yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was it's huge. Oh my
It's
God, it's
massive.
big, yeah. And it was
It's
right
massive.
on the harbor. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I got an electric bike and I was disappointed. Because I like to keep fit. I says, have you got a bike? Says, we've only got the electric ones. And I said, electric bike? What's that? Because this was a while ago. Says, yeah, you don't have to pedal for a while if it's a big hill. I says, I can take any hill. And so I had the electric bike and it was this big hill. And I went, Doink. And I went, oof. I thought this is brilliant. I gotta get a electric bike next time. Because no matter how fit I was, it's still a pain having to slow right down and go, oh, oh, oh. And that just went straight up that hill. Doesn't make you a
Have you
bit
been
lazy.
on those electric scooters? The Lime ones?
I think we might have talked about that. There's only one way you can keep your dignity on that, and it's to do a pose, like, or just be fixing your hair as your, but see that little thing there with your knees
Yeah,
together?
it is
It
kind
don't
of
know.
silly, like kind
It'll
of
work.
dinky.
Girls can get
You
away
can
with
do a
it.
jump. You can be real extreme on those things.
You doing
Yeah.
tricks?
Is that, I tell you what, the company won't be happy.
They don't happen
Tricks.
now.
Like ollies, like you spin it. Is that right? Is this mic on?
I think so.
So an ollie's a jump.
Oh,
Yeah, can you not do that on a scooter? Well, Rachel
Yeah,
says she
yeah, you
does
could do that.
tricks.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Yeah.
to do anything.
Oh, is it Melanie?
Yeah,
Is it Melanie doing the? Oh, I thought it was Rachel
yeah.
doing the
No,
jumps.
she
It's you,
broke her
Melanie.
leg.
Did she?
I,
Shouldn't
for
have.
for the sake of legal reasons, I cannot speak further on the topic.
Was there a scooter involved?
Yes.
There, now you learned your lesson. All right. Sorry that happened to you.
We
Okay.
got some
Future.
Yeah, we do have
Yeah.
some questions.
So let's see here. So we got one from Evan. It says, how meticulous are you when checking proportions and measurements from a photograph?
Another great question. Not at all. Do the opposite. Stop it. Stop it right. Stop it right now. Everyone. There's no point in taking measurements from a photograph because it's already distorted, unless it's a standing up figure. I mean, these little drawings here, that hand is coming forward from that hip. Right away, that's distorted in the photograph. Right away. So what I would say, the only photographs that you should use for proportions are a standing up straight figure because everything is on the 2D plane. You can do measurements from that. Afterwards, forget about it. It's just pointless. And it gives you a chance to break away from that system. You can see me do it here. I was talking the other day. Who was it to? I can't remember. And I was trying to think. I was in my online class, and I recorded it. And I said there was a certain drawing that I did once after years of tracing. And that's another thing we should address. That tracing, people are frightened of even saying it, but everyone's tracing in the professional arena. Tracing is happening all the time, 24/7, all the time. But I always say the only person who should be tracing is a professional artist. Anyone else at your peril. But it doesn't mean you can't trace a little light bit of tracing and then start working from that. I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute. But after all my years of tracing, I lost all my skills because I was working in advertising. If you didn't trace, you didn't get paid. It was as simple as that. You could spend 10 hours drawing a picture and correcting the proportions over and over, and everything you had to do to be ethically okay with not tracing, while the other guy's done 5 traces and made his week's wages in that morning that you were faffing around. So it didn't take long for me to go, okay, I better start tracing. And then years later, no skills left. And I remember going, I can't do this anymore. And so I decided to start drawing cartoons as a segue out of advertising. Because when I came to realism, everyone was tracing. And I remember after just skilling up through the new masters, for instance, was a good way to go. And seeing how, go back to the basics again, just how important the foundation was. And within 6 months, because I already was a good artist, I had years and years of being good, but then I was just slick, and slick isn't good. And so about 6 months later, I got the skills back. And I was trying to remember one drawing in particular where I felt, I've drawn this faster and better than if I'd have traced it. Because I remember how long it took to trace things. And this was the drawing. I couldn't remember which one it was. It was this one. And if I didn't draw like this, if I traced this, I would have not had any of this wonderful shorthand stuff in there because I'd have been tracing something which doesn't have all that shorthand stuff in it. So look at the roughness of all of this, and then the refinement of this, and the changing and design of things as I go. If you watch this later and pause it, you'll see how many changes have been made in this. And getting down to a point now where that's a much more livelier and a much more beautiful thing than any trace could ever be. And I did it faster than a trace. And now I'm skilled back up, and I'm drawing better, and I'm getting more commissions because I'm unique and the other guys are still tracing. It was a waste of time. It was a whole waste of time. Now, that said, I'm going to show you what a trace should look like if you're going to do a trace. So, frightened here. Let's have a look. So I am looking for, let's have a look. Week 6, part 1. Week 1, part 6. There it is there. So this one, have a look up here. Now, if you are going to blow up something onto a giant canvas, for instance, you're going to have to grid it up, or you're going to have to do something to get it up there. Because look how small this studio is. Now, this is where I used to paint. And if I was to blow up a pencil sketch here, I can't step back far enough to see the errors in it. So that's the time when you can do a trace on a computer of the basics and then grid it onto your canvas and then start drawing. I mean, proper drawing. So here's what that would look like if you did it. It would look like that. If you did it any more than that, you may as well forget about style. So I've done this as an example in my course. That's a tracing of a new master's model. Now, the new master is an incredibly skinny model, and I traced it here. And here's what a great thing does when you trace something instead of copying a photo. Look at how disproportionate that leg is compared to everything else. A quick trace like that instead of a finished trace will show you everything that was wrong with that photo. So it actually teaches you something not to do. But it's a danger. Now, the leg is not a proportion. Everything else is, because everything else is camera distorted. Look at that silly little arm there. It looks like a horse's leg, a horse's knee. Look at that silly little stump of a hand. Everything in the trace is exposed to how bad photo reference is right there. Look at that tiny little head just there. I wish it wasn't clipped by that black bar for no reason at all. But there's a little tiny head in there. And this is in my course, by the way. So watch. I would love to have the luxury of having a model pose for me all day. And I would just draw it. And I would never trace. I would never do it. It would be a waste of time. But here's me drawing without tracing to show you how you should draw on top of that. If you trace that out, fade it right down to nothing on a tracing paper and put it on your canvas and burnish it down. Or what I would do is just soften it right down on the trace, put another trace on top and start drawing right away like this on the right and throw the tracing away immediately. And then the rest of your day is this. We draw. So if you're not that good at drawing yet, this is the way you could do it. You could do a quick trace, but you have to learn how to draw. So here I am drawing without tracing. Look how much more dynamic that is. Isn't it gorgeous? I mean, it doesn't even exist in the same realm as that or anything that could be derived from that. I've muscled it up. I've made the head come up above that point. Oh, there it is. There. See the silly little head? That's a direct trace, by the way, of where the head landed right there. You can't have that headless man. But people will. They'll say, oh, there's the photograph. And I'll draw the photograph. I'll copy the photograph. And they'll cite the photograph as the Bible. They'll go, it has to be exactly like that. Look at the dynamism coming into this. Look at the rocky landscape. What's been left out. Here's a bit of Van Dor's zone for you. Look at these lost edges and these muted values. Look at them. None of that's in that. So the minute you're already copying from a photograph, you're looking at hard edges and you're influenced by them. So I'll take that to the final. I mean, come on. Tracing is not going to give you that. Not in a million years. So forget about it. And proportions, be damned. Proportions. Once you're doing foreshortened drawings like this, you don't need the proportions anymore. You need the volumes, So I've worked out that if you get the hips and you get the torso in a good volumetric, same kind of size, everything else can come off of that. Everything. So get your torso right and you're fine.
I got another question from YouTube I could ask.
Yes, go ahead.
From Chris Deere. He said, I have a question about burnout. I've spoken to a few people that say you need to practice 4 hours at least a day for years to get good at a professional level. If I did that, I'd draw for a month and never draw again. How do people maintain this without burning out?
I don't want to say idiot's corner, but the person that say that should be in an idiot's corner.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and Steve Houston said it. He said, anybody that says you have to, stop listening. Just stop listening to them altogether, right? And that's why I said photo trace and trace if you like, but at your peril. There's no laws in art. Do whatever it is you need to do the drawing. And if you enjoy that, then it's working. If you're getting depressed and burnt out, it isn't working. So if 4 hours a day is burning you out, stop doing 4 hours a day and do two, do one, do 10 minutes. So stop, just stop the
Seems
second
like
you're uninspired. There's no point.
yeah, like quality over quantity of time there
Yeah,
too. 4 hours of what?
exactly. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
4 hours. What? I was drawing the other day and I said to myself, like I always do, I don't say anything. It's just subliminal. I'm going to draw until I stop. And stopping means when I don't want to draw anymore. And see, the second I give myself that leave, draw until you don't want to anymore. You couldn't stop me. But if you said to me, I mean, I went in there at, what was it, 10 a.m. and came out at 7 p.m. and didn't notice the day had gone. And if you'd have said to me, you have to do 4 hours, I would have went, oh, that's a task. I would have probably procrastinated for two of them, reading books, and then did one and went, I don't want to draw anymore. Draw until you don't want to draw anymore. I mean, we're long-lived creatures. We're not turtles, but we got thousands and thousands of hours ahead of us. You don't like to do 4 hours a day for 6 months. Idiot's corner for that guy.
I
Wherever
have
he
another
was.
question that I guess could go off of this. You're very entrepreneurial. You got a lot of projects going on. How do you know, how can you differentiate between a good project and when you need to drop a project?
I would
Like,
love to give you sage advice there, but
okay.
unfortunately, you'll keep on picking up a
Because
bad project.
sometimes you just gotta let them die, right? Like
You
some
gotta let
of
him
them,
die.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I,
But
I can give
how
you,
do you know? You just gotta tough through it until you've given up. Like,
well, you can have warning signs. Here's a warning sign.
okay.
Here's a warning sign. Now, from my vast time, haven't been burnt that much, but you're going to get burnt. It's as simple as that. There's hucksters, there's grifters. Basically, just turn on YouTube, and every ad that comes on, I mean, like everyone is a grift because they're not using proper channels. They're just going, well, not, YouTube's a proper channel, but they know that the regulations are slack. So they go, here's what big pharma doesn't want you to know. Here's what here's what doctors are hiding from you. What, those horrible, scurrilous doctors? Those evil people that chose a profession to help people? They're trying to grift you, but I'm not. You know what I mean?
Wait
It's
a
so
second.
obvious.
Yeah.
What doctors don't want you to know. But the warning signs I learned very early was I would always say, it's the simplest thing in the world. Here's a bit of simple advice for you guys. They're gonna It's business. People are going to try and get you at the cheapest price. But the second they ring you, somebody said you're good. So the second they ring you, you're valuable. So when they say to you, so how much will that cost us? Instead of going, oh, $20, they'll take the 20 if they've got a budget for 2,000. They'll take it. And what I learned very early on is I just said to them, what's your budget? And they went, oh, let me find that for you. And they go to your accounts and say, what's the budget on this illustration? And they come back and they tell you. And that's the maximum budget. So you don't have to start talking to them about it. Now, they might not do that. That's me as a professional artist, many years experience, where I can just talk to the art director like that. I can just say, what's your budget? And it took the weight off them because they didn't have to do the shell game. Oh, I don't know. That's a bit much. Oh, our budget doesn't have that. How much is your budget? It's this. Okay, I can work with that. Oh, fantastic. Let's get on to the creative part. So there's a tip for you. What's your budget? So I learned very earlier on, what's your budget? Don't worry about money. We have tons of money. That is the biggest red flag you're ever going to hear in your life. Nobody has tons of money. Well, Elon Musk does, but he's not going to give you all of his billions. So I learned very early on when people said, don't worry about the budget, it meant they didn't have one, meaning they didn't have any money at all. So that's another way to find out if anyone's got the money to pay you. You say, what's your budget? And they're stumped because they had no intention of paying you. So they don't know what the budget is because there isn't one. So there's that. You will get grifted and even way into it. Even when I had an agent, they can grift an agent. I remember being grifted by a company that was working with Trader Vic's. I think I probably told you this before. So I'll cut it short. Basically, we just went, oh, it's an agency. They're in London. They've got an office. Trader Vic's a big company. it's a done deal. So we worked on it and we didn't get paid and we didn't get paid and we weren't getting paid. I could tell the phone wasn't even being answered. I said, John, you know it's time, don't you? And what we used to do, I know this sounds really weird. We used to put on a big jacket. And we had people up when I worked up in North, and there was a biker in our studio. And is it time for the jackets? Yeah. And Dave would bring his biker jackets out and we would put them on and we'd go round to that agency.
Make you look bigger.
Just I would smash the place up. Because in those agencies, nobody's got leather jackets on.
Yeah,
So
where's my money?
our job, we didn't say anything. Our job was to just walk into the office with Dave or whoever it was wasn't getting paid, and we just stood there. We just stood there, and they paid, and we just all walked on again. We never said a word. We just stood there because
That's
they can
great
grift you.
advice.
They can grift you with a lawyer. They can grift you with a lawyer.
Yeah.
They really intimidated me. What did they do? Well, he just stood there. They just stood there. Yeah, well, he just stood in that corner over there. Yeah, but that's it. There's nothing there.
Me mugging.
Yeah, so I said to John, let's go. So we got the tube and we went over and we went, and as we got closer and closer to that office, our hearts sank. The windows were papered up. We went over, we looked in the letterbox, and there was mail that had been sitting there for 6 months. We weren't getting paid. And I really needed that money. That was thousands and thousands of pounds the Trader Vic hadn't, just as a disclaimer here, Trader Vic had no idea that an artist had been ripped off because they got paid. They just didn't pay us. I just want to stop for a second to have a look at these little drawings on the left. For anyone that feels that, the drawings aren't good. I remember the night I did those drawings and I thought they were just awful. I did them both on the same page. I thought they were dreadful. And I didn't want to show them to anyone. And there was a guy next to me, and he was a very famous artist in Brisbane, in Australia here. Very famous. And he was much older than me. And he turned around and he said to me, you've been trained, haven't you? And I thought, I think that's a compliment. But I was really ashamed of those drawings. And now when I look at them, I love them. I love them because they are clunky. They show no sign of what he said. And because he was such a good artist, he meant you can't see the nuts and bolts. That's what he meant by you've been trained. You can't see the wheels turning. You can't see anything other than a nice drawing there. That's what he meant. Whereas you often hear, have you been trained? Because you can see the influence of some other school, of a school of thought. Where you go, oh, you're from that school, or you're from this school. That's what he meant. You've been trained not to look like that, not to have that thing. But isn't that strange? I thought they were awful drawings. And that's what self-doubt does to you later. You go, I'm no good. You're bloody brilliant. Just make sure that oh no, I said bloody. America, that's it. I've shut down the internet in America. Is that a bad word?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
Is that a cuss word?
That's
No,
that's
I
not
don't think
offensive at
so.
all.
Yeah.
We have
Oh.
another YouTube question, Patrick,
Go ahead.
from Luke Welcher. What's your process for creating fantastical beasts, or who do you look to for inspiration?
Oh, geez, that's a good one. Claire Welding is very good. Claire Welding. Is it Welding or Welding? I think it's Welding. She's very good. But I love basically the Victorian artists that did it because they were just starting to work it out. And you could see the mix-ups they had. There's great stuff from Lord Lytton that he did, but you could sort of see where the wings were attached and how he got better and better at it. So I think if you look at the art of Star Wars, I think the Phantom Menace, there's an art of there, and there's some great work in there by, oh boy, if I could pull the artist names out, but there's a couple of artists in there, and they are just superb. And that's what you got to do. You got to study the people that had the design for movies, because those designs went through the mill so much, especially with George Lucas having his eyes on them all. Because I work for George Lucas. And he stamps things. He says, not this time. Oh, that's brilliant. Not this time. It was always positive. And so he's been through that, stamp, stamp, stamp. And they end up with these great designs. Study them and you'll learn how to do it. Rather than try and do like the Victorians did. They tried to pretend they went to a different country and found a new beast. And they would stick two animals together, stitch them together and go, look what we found. Architects. This used to exist. And they looked awful. How they fooled anyone is beyond me. So yeah, so study what's already been designed. Like I say, Claire Wedling and that And look at Boris as well. He's good at it. Boris and Frank Frazetta, they're really good to study. To soon pass this because people are so scared. But yeah, so and draw at the size that you're comfortable with. Little sketchbooks are great for the train and everything, but if you feel your hands falling off the edge, then you've sort of lost, you've come out of that zone where you're just thinking of the image. So look how big I draw. I love newsprint. I love a big board and make sure that my hand is always just gliding around on the outskirts of the drawing. And then you can trim the drawing. So big sheets of newsprint, how beautiful that is. I know I sound like a real, what do they say in America, jerk? If I'm not a real jerk, I'm not just saying how great he is. But what I'm really admiring is the line and the tone and the joy of art, not just particularly mine. If that was another artist, I'd be going, oh, look at that. Look at the wonder of it. What I'm saying is look at how beautiful art is and how valuable it is in our lives if we don't have it. I mean, I can't imagine not having it. It would just be horrible to me.
That was one
It
of
would
your
be just,
questions.
it was one
Yeah,
of the
that,
questions.
that
Sorry,
was one of my closed questions, Patrick.
rewind. Go ahead, ask it, Melanie.
Oh, well, okay. So we talked about this, and I'm going to make it as open as possible. Why is art important, and why should people pursue a career in art? And obviously it's important, and we all love art, but
Yeah.
if you could put it into words, how would you describe why it's important?
I think it's important because it's been lost. It was practically beaten out of us in kindergarten. So we go to kindergarten, and you know what? Kindergarten was as close to the Greek school of thinking than every school that came after it. In kindergarten, there was no curriculum, there was no questions to answer. It was just basically a master saying, here's, have fun with that. And then they overlook it. And they go, that was very good. This would be good too. So that was the Greeks' idea. The Greeks invented school. And their idea of school was, here's knowledge, expand on it. There was no grading. There was no that's wrong or this is right. It was all, let's grow this together. So for me, art is important because it was beaten out of us before we went to school, and we never got it back again, unless we were very lucky like me or like you guys. And so it's important to everyone. People that don't think it's important to. They go to the movies, they read books, they read magazines. Everything is art. Everything that's an entertainment to them is art. Entertainment isn't going home and staring at a wall, is it? It's turning on Netflix. It's all art. It's all been produced. It's all been thought out. Someone's written it. Someone has designed it in the background. Someone has directed it. It's all art. And it's important because I see it as a definite. So I see kindergarten. Oh, that was wonderful. And then for a lot of people, most people, no hands-on art. And then I do a workshop, and who walks in? Doctors, lawyers, people you would think they had, and they did have an incredible career. What would they have rather done? Art. And so they come out of those careers and they come and learn art. That's what they want to do for the retirement. They want to do what they always wanted to do. And there's so many people said that. I was forced into being a doctor or a lawyer because they were the big high-end waged jobs. And all they really wanted to do was art. So that's what happens. So you can have it throughout your life. You don't have to have it beaten out of you in kindergarten. Do it without being paid. Just do it whenever you want to. What a joy that is. And that's practically what I do now after years and years of the grind in the mill and going back to Chris being burnt out, not once, but many times in different industries. So I would change industries to try to keep the fire alive and then get burnt out again. So find a style, promote that style. In America, you've got that joy. Like we had to do every style because it was a small country. In America, you can produce a style and go, here's my style, take it or leave it. And you might make a pretty good living out of it. And if you do say there's not enough living here for me, what I used to do was I would have 6 portfolios and every one of them was a different style and every one of them was a different name.
That's
Take Robert
madness.
Smith. Yep. Take Robert Smith thought my agent came in. She said, we need an industrial job done. I go, take Robert Smith thought. And so she would take Robert Smith, the portfolio, because I don't want to see that job again. That's a one-off. If I'm not busy, take Robert Smith out. And it was a portfolio full of all industrial stuff that I'd done. And she would show it to the art director, and I get the job immediately. because everyone else's portfolios had a bit of this, a bit of that, and a bit of industrial. The minute Robert Smith came in and it was all industrial, give it to him. He's the expert.
Why not put your own name on all those?
Because the guy's jack of all trades and master of none.
Oh,
It just
okay.
gets in their it just gets in their minds that you're not a professional industrial designer. You're just this guy that tries it out every once in a while. So a cartoon job comes in. What kind of cartoon was it? Is it a frivolous cartoon? Is it for kids? Or is it what's called an intellectual cartoon, which is what banks used? I love doing those, which basically didn't look like any of the cartoons on TV. It was a different kind of style. You can think of UPA, for instance. They were a different kind of style from Disney. And I would say, yeah, go and take out Robert Plant. You know, I'm just making up names from singers. And she would take it out. And I'd get the job right away because it opened it up and they go, yep, that's exactly what we're looking for. And this guy is obviously the king of that. And I would get the job. So I would have 6 portfolios. But the portfolio was the fantasy art portfolio. And it was right there. And that's the job I wanted every time. And it wasn't in advertising. And so I finally burnt out and went, you know what? The internet exists. And I didn't know how long I stayed there before I realized that I don't have to live in America to get American work. And so I rang up bold as brass 2 agents, one in New York and one in Los Angeles, and I got them both. I got both of them. And I was working in fantasy and science fiction with only exclusively. That's all I was doing. Oh boy. That's tough, isn't it? Kiddies.
Yeah.
That was a tough old life.
That's crazy to have 6 different
Yeah.
portfolios.
Oh, it was a grind. It was a
Yeah.
grind. But it was wonderful. You know, when you're young, that's what I was saying earlier. You asked me a question earlier. Do you remember the one about, we'll leave it to the end. Do you remember the advice?
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that. Go ahead with anything else.
Do you want to ask one of your
Let's see.
questions?
Checking the chat. No more questions there. Oh, how long did it take you to write your book, Patrick?
That's a really good question because it's another one of those organic things. So it wrote itself, is what it did. So when I was teaching class, I would make these little study sheets and see how it's all printed here. I would write, you've seen me, I always write notes on drawings. So I would write notes on drawings because some of the class couldn't see. So if you see in one of my books, let me see if I can find a picture of me in class. I think this one here. Oh, sorry, Katie. I'll have to bleep that out. Why are people so prudish, honestly? Let's have a look and see. It's the most innocent thing in the world, our own selves. Unbelievable. Anyway, that's my political gripe right there. So let's get through here. There's me teaching class. Oh no, I know what it's in. Oh, it's in the photos it's drawing from photos. Oh, of all the research I was doing earlier there, that was the one I was looking for. Drawing from photos. Anyway, I would teach a class and they would gather around. And if it was a class over 5, basically there's 10 of them, 5 of them aren't going to see if there's 10, 15 aren't going to see if there's 20, 25. And so most people couldn't see it. So I would write notes as I was drawing so that afterwards, those that couldn't see very well would have the sheet and I'd put it up on a whiteboard. I would stick it there with a magnet. And I would do that for the whole class. You can see me making notes here. Like I'd break it down again over in the corner like that. And I would make notes and I'd put them up. Each sheet would be drawing. And that's why it was really important for me to be able to draw. Because if I just said, you guys draw and I'll come around and critique, that's only half a class in my eyes. There's my class there. You can see they're not my drawings, but it was a big class. So I would teach in that class. And it was those study sheets that the students, I said, photograph anything, and they'd photograph those study sheets. And I realized they're photographing the study sheets more than anything. That's what they really learned by. And so I had a big stack of them. And I eventually went in and started putting them together as just a PDF of just the study sheets. That's what I did. And then I thought, let's enlarge on that because the study sheets, if you're not in the class, are only making so much sense. And so I started to write a book around that. And the book, it's hard to say how long it took because it was organic. It came from that time. I mean, I don't know how long it took me to do all those study sheets because I did them just in class. And then I added to the book after this. It would have taken me forever if I'd have pursued the path that I started with, which was to try and write a book like books were written before, which was dry academia. It was if one would like to find the angle and the proportion of a figure, and one must first address the issue. And I went, you know what? I wouldn't read that. I wouldn't read that trollop, right? And so I thought, you know what? Write it as you draw. And as I drew, I wrote it. I just went, the reason I'm doing this is because of that. And this is a good tip here. And I wrote the book like that, and it was massively popular. And I thought, why doesn't everyone write like this? It's so obvious that people want to hear a voice. They don't want to hear an authoritarian noise coming at them. So once I wrote the first one, the second one took no time at all. When I say no time, let's say it takes 4 months to write a book, but you're not sitting there writing a book for 4 months. You're just doing the drawings and then you go and write it all. I could write a book now, I reckon, in maybe 3 days solid, something like that. But then I'd have to go back and I would have to, you read it back to yourself the next day and it looks like a load of nonsense sometimes, well, often. And then I highlight things that are important, our mind's eye. You can see it being putting it in dark there, lost and found, things that were really important to me. If I tried to write that book when I was 20, it would have taken me years because I didn't have enough knowledge to do it. So basically the knowledge is a stream of consciousness and then tied back into something a little bit clearer. So that paragraph there would probably be 20 times the size. And then I break it down into something that it's the same thing. Everything in there is understandable at a smaller block. Like Mark Twain said, sorry about the length of this speech. I hadn't got the time to write a shorter one. And that makes total sense to me. When people write big, long speeches, they're rambling. They haven't a clue. So that's what a good speechwriter is. They cut out all the guff.
When did
So,
you start to teach?
I started to teach. I had it in the calendar. I think it was definitely before 2010, because that's when I built my website. I remember that, the first iteration of it. So I must have been teaching, I think it was 2006. So I've got a lot of experience teaching, a long, long time. But I always taught like no other teachers. I always taught, when I'd hear a teacher in class, I would listen because I wasn't a proper teacher. I didn't have a degree. I didn't have any of that stuff. I was basically this odd creature. And the odd creature works like this. I don't know about America, but universities here, they have a percentage, a very tiny, I mean like minuscule, almost doesn't exist percentage of teachers that are special because they're published and they are renowned in the industry. And that is open for a very short time. And that's why they brought me in. So they brought me in because I had a name, but I didn't have qualifications. So it was very hard for me to teach because I was listening to the other teachers. I go, geez, that's boring. And I would go, I can't teach like that. I'd bore myself. I'd fall asleep teaching the class. And so what I did is I just taught it my way. I thought, this is what I'd like to be taught. The classes were packed. They were packed out. I had to turn students away. And I went, is it because they know me? And then I realized they didn't. They didn't know me at all. Only one or two. And it was other students. They'd say, that's the class. You'll learn stuff from there. That's the best place to learn. So it wasn't long before I realized that I'm teaching in a style that's popular and it actually hits home. And it's great. Like I met a student in a supermarket the other day and a big beard. And he says, Pedro, you were my favorite teacher. And I couldn't see who he was because, like I say, 2006.
Yeah.
There's a big man standing over me.
Yeah, he recognized you.
He recognized me. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Doesn't he recognize me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you're growing, let's say once you hit 30, it's kind of look the same forever. But they're 18 and then the 25 and they're these big men. And I says, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to picture you back there. And he told me who he was and the name rang a bell. And I said, have you got Instagram? And I looked him up on Instagram. And I says, is there pictures of you from that time? And he says, yeah. And I went down it and I went, of course, that little guy. It's that skinny little guy right there. He was funny. He was a laugh. And that's how I remembered him. So long, long time teaching. But here's the rub now. Because I'm a petulant child, I will only teach in university if I don't grade. That's my line.
I think grades, I've thought about that. Like grading doesn't really work for art. I'd say critique not great
Critique.
is like where
Well,
I'm
not,
at.
but I would wind it back, Rachel. I say criticism is definitely destructive, and I think that's what grading is. Whereas
Okay.
critique, if it's a positive critique, you're always saying this will make it better is the
Yeah,
way for
yeah.
this will make it better. So yeah, for me, critique is invaluable. Whoops, that was nice. Was that Saudi Arabia? It kind of looks like it.
Whoa, where are we going?
Do some traveling.
Yeah. Oh boy, that was the first place I saw Saudi Arabia. I get off the plane and I thought an eagle had swooped on me because of the heat. I bent down like that because it was air conditioning, and then all of a sudden it was the Saudi Arabian heat. And
Holy
I jumped.
cow.
It was so hot. You should have seen us from the plane because we used to get off at the tarmac. From the plane to the passport office, we were slushing in there like we'd been a swim in the ocean. Every one of us. All our clothes were just soaked. It was horrific. Horrific. Anyway, I'm digressing.
All right. Well,
But
we have more YouTube questions from a few
yeah.
people. So Caroline Dotrep,
A little more
uh,
personal.
did you use drawings
Oh,
as a coping mechanism while growing up in the Troubles?
absolutely, I did. 100%. And I wasn't aware of it. I was totally unaware that that's what I was doing. So, and is she from the Troubles? Can you ask? For someone to know the word Troubles would say that they were from the UK or from that time, maybe.
I feel like everyone's like heard of the term the Troubles. I had to like
Yeah.
look it up after getting to know you. I was like, I should actually know some history about this. And I was like horrified. I was like, because when you
Yeah.
hear like you think, oh, maybe some people roughing like each other up in the street, but it's
Yeah.
like you said, a war zone. I
Yeah.
think people are
Totally.
naive to like how extreme it was.
Yeah. It was
But
a
as far as
euphemism.
yeah,
Yeah, it was a euphemism so that it didn't seem that bad. So
Yeah.
basically, once again, it was the media, usually
yeah,
conservatives that wanted to play it down because, it was perpetrated by that government, really, that was printed in the papers. And thankfully for the BBC, they were impartial, totally impartial, and they would tell the truth. And I'm always grateful for the BBC. And all the way down to David Attenborough. He was the head of the BBC. Can you believe it? That one man kept the BBC honest. That one man, and he does Life on Earth. A saint, an
yeah.
absolute saint
Yeah,
right
he's a
there,
pretty
David
swell
Attenborough.
guy.
What a great guy. So yeah, the Troubles, I would go up on rooftops and I would take the solace of my little comic books, Spider-Man usually, and Marvel comics. I know that everyone knows Marvel now, but see, back then, it was just the nerds, just a select few nerds. If I showed it to my friends in school, they go, "What's that trash?" Probably burn it, fight you. Not only had we to deal with another side, another group of people that wanted to kill us, but because it was so tough, because of that, then everybody was tough. So in your own neighborhood now, you're getting roughed up by your own tribe. So there was that. You couldn't, I mean, I love today where you can walk down the street wearing a purple suit if you want. In my day, you wouldn't get to the end of the street. That suit would have been ripped to shreds. It would have been set on fire, and you'd be walking home in your shorts. That's how it was when I was growing up. So I'd get up on that roof and I would read my Spider-Man comics and I would draw. And I would do that all day until the sun set. I would do that. I'd build little houses out of cardboard boxes because the roof I used to sit on was just out the back of these local shops. And they used to throw all their cardboard boxes out because of deliveries. And I would take them up onto that roof and I would make a little hut. I would just sit in there. And that would get me out of the sun, the very few times there was sun. And it would keep me wet. It would keep me dry until the whole thing collapsed, when the rain come on. And that was the
Yeah.
end of it. But yeah, absolutely did.
The
Art
way
is
I kind of
therapy.
see it, like, because like when you're in like a chaotic world, and I think a lot of people today can relate to the chaos
Yeah.
and how do I make sense of things? I feel like drawing is one of those few things where you can kind of like develop a way to kind of make sense of stuff. Like at least this makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I'm
Absolutely.
going with that. Like, I don't know, like that's how I think of that at least. Carolyn said something else. She said, so drawing can be a good method to deal with trauma as well. I don't know if it's like that, but I feel like it's just something to kind of ground you in reality a little bit more
Yeah.
when the world is crazy.
Yeah. But there is that too, on a serious note, people with trauma do come into art classes because, first of all, it's peaceful. And also, it's very unusual for a bunch of artists to put on leather jackets and beat you up.
Yeah,
It's not the
yeah,
kind of, it's tending not to be that kind of people, right? So
yeah.
So it's a very nurturing place. But I definitely find that. I find people come in, it's very common for people that normally wouldn't go to anywhere will come into an art studio. And very common for the university to have loads and loads of people that come into the art classes in particular that are kind of wallflowery. Meaning they don't like to be seen and they go to the back of the class. And I know them. I just see them all the time. There they go. There's the wallflowers down to the back of the class. And I had a mechanism for that. I would put them in groups. I would go down to the wallflowers and I'd say, okay, you guys come up to the front. We'll all sit together and we'll bash this idea out. And once they were together, it wasn't one, it was all together. And they were with me and we'd sit in this round table, which I'd designed to be that. And we would sit and bash it out. You couldn't shut them up. Once they come out of their shell, they were the squawkiest, screamy bunch. They were actually the opposite. They were now extroverts. They'd gone introvert, extrovert, which was so common. And they had the time of their lives, you know? So art, if you think about it, brought them their confidence because there was others like them that they didn't, because they're, you know, what bullies are like, they'll pick on the weak. And they didn't realize just how many of them there are. There's more nerds than anybody. If there was a nerd revolution, you know, if the nerds got armed, we'd be finished. There's millions of them. But they're, you know, they're not allowed to be themselves. But art does that. Art allows you to be whatever you want to be. All right, great question.
So we have one more question about Ireland. So
Oh, really?
Evan asks, how would you characterize the figure drawing scene in Ireland?
Better. When I was there, you heard my story. There's practically nothing. And back to that story again. So they bring the big photographs in and I would airbrush the skies. And the guy would go, look at our plane. It looks amazing. And that big blue sky. And now there I was as a photo retoucher. And they brought them all in. They just kept coming in with these giant. I said to him, can you get me 2 of them? It's very expensive, everything back then. I says, why would you need 2? I says, well, I've never photo retouched before. You know, totally honest with him.
Yeah.
And I cut the first one, and it was lucky that he brought a second one because I was scoring the photograph with the blade because you have to get a fresh blade and cut out the mask. And I was scoring it. And so on the first one, I learned all the problems with working on a photographic surface, which are very fragile. You know, you can't wear a ring, you can't touch it with any sharp object, you're going to scratch the photo. So I had to really cover that entire thing with tissue and work on the sky. So the second one was pristine. And he went, we've got 20 more. And they kept bringing them in. And I was off and running. I had enough money now, 1 day a week, to fund my art that I could do. So I've always done that. I've always found one thing that could fund the rest of the week. So I would advise that. See if you can find one thing. I had a friend, he refused to do that. He'd rather work in a supermarket. I says, I can teach you to airbrush and you never have to go back and work in the supermarket again. You can do this. He worked in the supermarket every day.
Yeah.
Every night to come into the studio every day. He says, I can teach you this and you can have this done by lunchtime. And that's your wage for the rest of the week that you get in the supermarket. And he wouldn't do it. He felt it was beneath him.
Wants that 9 to 5.
No, it wasn't even that. Maybe it was that actually, Rachel. Maybe he was just didn't feel maybe he felt he didn't have the skills. I don't know. But I think what he did give as an explanation was I wouldn't sully my artistic hand on that commercial trash. I think that's what he really thought. I said, well, get yourself a Robert Smith portfolio then.
Yeah.
Robert Smith is the lead singer of The Cure, by the way.
Okay. I thought you were making up another name, telling him to make a portfolio. Okay.
I love The Cure. Love The Cure. You just got a new album out, by the way, after 20 years or something. Now, there's an example. Look at those guys. They didn't bring an album out every year. 20. Yeah, we'll bring one out this year. Bring 2 out. And they were brilliant for it. All right, so we must be coming close to the end. So can we say 15 minutes?
Yeah, you can ask your last question if you like.
Well, if we have 15 minutes, we probably have time for a few more.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Diplomacy.
I think I got through most of mine.
Patrick, do you have a favorite painting?
A favorite painting? I have a few. It's a tricky one to say. Let me have a look through here. Let's see. I might have to go into my photos. Terrifying. I have to go into my photos. Who knows what will turn up? It'll be nothing terrible. but it doesn't matter. Might be someone says, "Hey, you showed me on YouTube there. Oh, that's our private little thing, you know."
I'm sorry.
There's many. I love this one. It was a tribute to Frank Frazetta, Egyptian Queen, because it was my favorite painting and still is of him. So when I painted that, I remember feeling I was in his world. So I really loved that. I really felt like I had something there. Excuse me. And also, it was my first great model, and she was just really on fire at that point. And she ended up going to Vancouver to live. She lives in Vancouver. So when I go
Oh,
to
cool.
Vancouver, I go and meet her, and we have lunch together. She's called Tora Highlands, and she went there to be an actor, and she was quite successful at it. And now she's a designer. So she got burnt out acting. So you would think, that's all I ever want to be, and then you do it, and you go, oh, it's not what I thought. So there's many. I love them all. I love them all. But that was one. Let me go. This was my favorite for a long time, Solomon's Loss. I tried not to sell that to a collector. I pretended I didn't have it. I mean, imagine that. You get the appointment, you go, I don't have it.
I don't know where it went.
I don't know what you're
Someone
talking
stole
about.
it.
Yeah, you want to have it. So that's the great look how much art is a wonderful thing rather than just a commercial thing. I painted this for myself and I wanted to keep it when I painted it. Isn't that weird? And that's only a portion of it. And what's wonderful about art is when you paint it, because you've seen me say a couple of times, wow, look at that. There's nothing more incredible. Well, not many things more incredible than you finish a painting and it takes your breath away. And you stand there and you go, 2 weeks ago, this didn't exist. And now it exists forever. It exists until the end of time, if it's curated possibly. It is being curated now. It's in a museum in Tokyo. This didn't exist 2 weeks ago, and now it does. And I love it forever. How wonderful is that? How valuable is that? And that's right there, proof positive of how valuable people think art is, that they can look at it over and over and over. There's very few movies you can watch over and over. There's a few, but 100 times, you'd have to be a real fan. I can look at that painting 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. So art, that one was my favorite. This was my favorite at the time. And here's an interesting one. See that little one there? That was a digital piece. And that was one of the very first paintings I had. Call it a painting. It's digital. When I left Jump Ship from advertising and went and found those agents, this was one of the very first jobs I did. And I was too scared to touch paint because it had been 10 years since I had painted anything. So I did it digitally and I did this and it set the world on fire. They loved it, even though they didn't publish it. He says, we love it. We can't publish that. It's too erotic for a children's story. I says, what are you talking about? I couldn't see it because I'm not from America. In Europe, that's nothing. Go to the Vatican and see what happens. Go to the Vatican and watch your glasses fly off and your shoes fly off. If you've got a prudish nature, because it's just nudes everywhere. Anyway, they didn't publish it. And I thought, I would love to have seen that published. But look at how poor the anatomy is. See that? Look at that. Because I had lost my skills from not drawing. Now, when I had to go to a LuxCon and produce real paintings after 10 years, I repainted that because I thought it would be an easier go because I'd already worked out the color schemes and everything. Look at the difference in the anatomy. And that's with paint. And so I got my skills back pretty fast because I was teaching at that time. So I was learning to draw again. Look at the difference, how weak that is, even though it looks great, to someone coming in and going, wow, I'd like to be able to draw like that. The difference. And this is a painting, and it's a really big painting. It's 40 by 40 inches. Wow. Now, you might go, that's not such a big painting if you go to an art gallery, but in the commercial world, that's huge. Commercial world paintings are basically what you see on the wall back here, 18 by 24. That's a painting. And see, when I painted that, I went, that's it. No more digital. And I stopped. I went, oh, well, digital for roughs. No more finished digital paintings. And I just carried on from there. So there you go. You see, and I hadn't lost a stroke. When I started painting that, I went, this is easy. So it sticks in your mind. It's like riding a bike. It's in there. When I was blending that, here's the other thing. When I was working digitally, I kept my painting skills up because I chose a program that's painterly, which was called Corel Painter. So I chose colors and I chose palette knives and stuff. So my hand was still there, but it still wasn't a painting, not a painting like this. And so I didn't miss a beat. Just went in there, painted it very quickly too. And I went, this should have been slower. And I realized why it wasn't. It's because I could draw. That's why it was faster. So that hiatus, I learned to draw again better. And when I went to paint, everything I had to paint was easy. I knew where the chromium process was. I knew where the brachioradialis is. Look at the fibers in there. I knew where these things connected now. So I wasn't just copying a photo. I was actually drawing with paint. That made all the difference. That was the first painting, actually, right there. I painted this for the exhibition, right? And I showed it to Pat Wilshire. I says, I'm bringing this along because I had to fill a wall. So it had to be big paintings. And when he saw that, he went, wow, can you paint the official poster for the event? It had to be a real oil paint. And I painted this for a LuxCon. So that was the first LuxCon. The first thing anyone ever saw of a LuxCon was that painting. And here's humble me out of nowhere, got that commission. And only art could do it. Only art, nothing else. If I'd have just carried on digging holes or collecting glasses in the Shamrock Club, that's where I'd be now. This old guy that's shuffling around the club collecting glasses. He's a character. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, being that character. But it wasn't for me. I needed art. And look where it took me. It took me to LuxCon. Here's the funny thing, Mr. Talkie Bags. When I got to the US and went to this event, which was in Pennsylvania, and I went into the town, this poster was everywhere. And I got off, basically I hired a car, and I got out of the car and I walked down the street and I went, are you dreaming this? You've never been here in your life. And there's your poster. You go to the lift to go up to the hotel in the Hilton. There's your poster in the lift. You go up to your room, you go, this doesn't make any sense. Nothing's making any sense. It's bizarre.
That's pretty surreal.
It was really weird. It was really very strange because I wasn't the headliner. Boris Vallejo was. Ray Hildebrand, Justin Sweet. Everybody was there. And it was my poster. I had to almost apologize. I'd go up to Boris. No idea who I was. I says, I painted the poster. And then he looked up. He went, oh. I was sitting at my booth, right? And I'd set it all up and everything. And Boris was way down there because I only went there to meet Boris. I eventually I only went there I tried to buy tickets and they were all sold out. And I said, can I come as an artist? And Pat Wilshire says to me, who are you? And I says, I did this work for Eastern Press. He says, that horror and sci-fi stuff. I says, yeah. He says, you can come as a guest. I can't believe it. As a guest? The tickets were $300. So now I'm going as a guest. And I was just staring over at Boris, too scared to go over and talk to him and Julie. And I'm sitting at my booth and I can't remember what I was doing. I was working on something, trying to find out where I can get lollipops or something to put on my desk. Because that's all my big tip as well. Get a jar of sweets and people stop and they have a sweet. So I was working on my little strategy and there was a figure beside me and I turned around, it was Boris. And he had his nose right up to that painting, the Dark Dreamer one, the mermaid. He had his nose right up to the painting. And I couldn't speak. I couldn't say a word. And he turned to me and he just looked at me and he says, this is great work, man. My heart went boom, boom, buddy, boom, boom. It's amazing. Incredible. I'd met him before that, by the way. But that was the first time, because I wanted to go over and talk to him privately. I'd met him when I was doing a talk. Oh, there's so many stories. I won't bore you with it, but there's so many stories.
Well, we have a few last call questions.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few more questions in the chat. Someone's asking, Zachariah is asking about a painting you're doing for a museum in Japan. He says it was in your last Anatomy of Style and loved it. Want to see how it's going.
Okay. Oh, the museum, I'm not sure if it's open yet or not. I'll have to go to it. So basically, when I went into it, he was just building it. So what he wanted to do, as far as I can discern anyway, is he wanted the biggest painting I could paint to showcase the museum. So I'd assume that when you open the doors, you walk in, there's that big painting right there. So it's pride of place. And then he bought the other one the one I didn't want to sell, Solomon's Loss. And then he asked me what else I had, and I was basically sold out, except for one painting that I was ashamed of called The Martian Princess. And I didn't mention it, and I thought, but it's horrible. I don't want anyone to see it. And he bought that too. So in there, it's my two of my favorite paintings are in there, and the one I'm most ashamed of. And I can't get it back. I gotta go in. I need some
Yeah,
kind
steal it.
of I need an underground organization to go in there under the cover of night and spray paint it. That's right. That's what I
Yeah.
need. I need to do that. But yeah, I don't know when it's going to open, but it is. This is for my course, by the way, where you learn how to draw. I'm putting on ones where you don't see photo reference. There's going to be loads of photo reference in it. But here I'm showing how to draw from the drawing being finished and how I got there. So basically, pedaling back on photography, it is really very destructive if that's always your only source. So in this course, the source for some of the drawings is going to be the finished drawing and show you how to build off of that. And I'll talk to you, Melanie and Rachel, just a bit after this about something we talked about earlier.
Okay.
It's a secret kind of thing, but we'll talk about it.
Cool.
Okay. Nothing to be scared of, by the way. It's just
Are we in trouble?
Oh
no, there's
no.
no trouble. No, it's no trouble. It's just basically a bit of showbiz goss. It's a little bit of
Okay.
scenes goss.
Well, we
Nobody's
got
getting hurt by it. Go ahead.
Chris Deere asking about the hard copy of Anatomy of Style. Is that a thing?
How did Chris find out about that?
I don't know.
That's real sleuthy work because I saw that in the Discord. So I was just talking to my publisher the other week, and he says we're nearly ready to launch. I says, let me know when we're ready. And then Chris launches it. I go, how does he know? I don't even know when the launch is. So I'm waiting for the publisher to come back and say to me, here's a coupon code, for the first buyers and things like that. But I think he's already put it up as it's free delivery in the UK. I don't know how he does it. He's got some kind of deal.
Some kind
But
of connections.
if you're in he's got connections. If you're in the UK, you can get that delivered for free. I just don't know how he does it. That's like an old sales pitch. I don't know how we do it. We're giving it away. We don't know how. I'm not making any money on this. I don't know. But if you're in the UK, you can order it now and it comes straight to your door. Brilliant. So yeah, the Anatomy of Style Revised. I always say, look, when a book comes out, guys, and it's not even a plug, I'm talking about any book. If you see a book that you want to have, you better buy it because that's going to go out of print in no time. And who knows when the print's coming back. I'm waiting for a Conan the Barbarian giant size that I held my breath on and then ordered it and it was out of stock. And I've been waiting 3 years for that. I could have had that 3 years ago. And it's still Amazon saying we don't know when this will be released. Just get them. So if you want the Anatomy of Style Revised and it's not a Spruik, you better buy it because they don't print those big runs like they used to. This is the third printing of that because they sell out. And you might go, well, then print another one. It's not like print on demand where you can just do that. It takes a year to schedule a book to be distributed. It takes at least that. That's the fastest you're going to get it. So when the book runs out, you'll be lucky to get the next reprinted in 2 years. And that's really optimistic. It's probably going to be 5 or never because you don't need to reprint it. They might go, I'm just going to print something else instead. So I'll get them. If that's out now, and you don't have to bother me with it because I don't sell them, So I get a lot of things. When's the book coming out? Or, where can I buy this? And when will you be printed? I don't print. It's all printed old style. It's printed from London. It sounded really grouchy there. Don't be bothering me with it. What I mean is I can't help you. I can't help you at all. So Correro Press in London, if you want any of the books, they're still drawing from photos, still available, but that's going out of print very soon. Every other book is out of print, with the Anatomy of Style coming back out, and the Anatomy of Style 2 coming out too. So if you're watching, Kerry Leonard wrote the foreword and it still hasn't got to me yet. Kerry, when it comes to me, I'll send you a signed edition of it. Thanks very much. And Stan Prokopinko. He wrote the foreword for the Anatomy of Style 2. Takes forever. There you go. Good one, Chris. I didn't even know. Yeah, if you want to know when it's coming out, ask Chris.
Yeah, apparently he knows.
He knows. Yeah, I didn't.
And then another
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
from Anthony W. He asks, when are you ready to start painting after learning to draw?
Right away. Today. Now.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
Go back to the kindergarten where you're just smeared
Yeah.
or you
You
can
just
paint.
smear it on.
Yeah.
Your
Look,
paints.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it. Look at it. Right. Let's say you've got a drawing. Here's what I would say. Look, if you're a bit apprehensive, just use umbers. Just use umbers. So here's an underpainting. Do a couple of them. So the drawing's under there. You can fill in a drawing. If you're working on a canvas, you might go, whoa, this is wobbly. You'll get over that in no time. Let's say you're not working on a canvas and you start filling that in. It's like anything. You just go, if you thin that oil down enough and pretend it's watercolor, then you're painting. You can add thickness to it later. But to be honest, my paints and every artist that I know, like Boris, I'm shocked at how thin the paint is. It's so thin. So I think what puts people off oils is they think they're thick because they're used to seeing fine art where they splatter it on. It's so thin. Work from the background forward. If you get here's the great thing about oils. You can be fearless with them. Let's say I block that background in and I go, that didn't work. Get a rag, wipe it back. You've still got the pencil there. As long as you've sealed the pencil. I seal my pencils with Liquitex matte medium because I'm sure it won't crack. So I seal the pencil, have as many goes as you want, and off you go and keep the color palette analogous. There I'm blocking it in. Imagine, I'll tell you how to do it. Learn how to draw with charcoal. Once you learn how to draw with charcoal, you're blending, you're moving things around with your fingers, you're working with paint. It's just dry. That's all. That's all it is. It's dry oil. And then just drop your color palette down to a few colors and you're done. Look, it's done. Anyone can do it if you start. But if you don't start, you can't. It seems so obvious. You can't do it if you don't start. Now, go get yourself 3 colors. No, just go get yourself 1 color. Go get yourself some burnt umber and start painting. Do 5 of them. And before you know it, you'll go, boy, I'd love to add a bit of color to this. Put a color on. Look, this is all just...
And white, and that would be another level.
And even that, you don't even need the white.
Yeah,
You can just use the white of the canvas. But yeah, like you say, there's certain colors that they look like more colors. Like the Brandywine School, because printing was so poor, they'd choose a particular blue. I think it was ultramarine. And when you add white to that, it kind of looks like 3 colors. And when you start to see the variations of the blue, and if you just take an ultramarine blue and let's say a red that hasn't got white in it, okay, so a translucent red. If you take those 2 colors, you can get almost black and anything in between from those 2 colors. It doesn't take much at all. Alizarin crimson. For some reason, I can never remember that color. Alizarin crimson is a red that will thin your blues or any other color down to a different color and a gorgeous, and it'll give you as many browns as you want if you add Indian yellow to it. So those 3 colors, ultramarine blue, see I've lost alizarin crimson and Indian yellow. Those 3 colors you can paint anything, add white to it. Practically every painting I do is only those 3 colors until the end. Then I start adding reds into it. Greens make themselves. You don't even need a green. I love olive green though, just because Frank Frazetta used it. So all this is all just 3 colors in there. Take a tip from, and you can sort of see it, look. Anders Zorn. It's kind of a variation of his palette, actually. And then add a few at the end. These blues are hard to get. You get a nice blue. That's a cobalt blue there. Those kind of blues with a bit of white in them. And also always take a photograph of your work and look at it in black and white. And then you'll see whether it's weak or strong. And that tells me that's a strong picture by just doing that. And this is where I add the colors later. You start to see the blues in there. Be very careful of blue, especially those new techno blues, I call them. Phthalo cyan blue. It's gorgeous. It'll get into everything. And before you know it, everybody's blue. Just a dot. Doink. And that goes on at the end. When everything's well, all the colors are dry, I put those colors on so I can wipe them back again if I need to. So you got every color under the rainbow out there now. But this is the stage I love the most. Just working it out. And like I say, if you're just starting, I mean, you can do a really detailed underpainting like I used to do there when I was a little bit more afraid of it. And I'll do a lot less than that now and probably just work straight on white. But that's not for the faint of heart. And then you can you're almost painting by your own numbers because you've already painted it. There's it painted. How can it go wrong? Look, I'm just moving down the canvas here. When I'm painting like this, another tip is to stop at the edges. I would stop here, and I would stop at any other point that has a stop to it, so that you don't have to mix your colors exactly the same again when you come back from the break if you stop halfway. So you'll stop at a certain point. Because, you can only paint so much if it's not abstract and blend so much in a day. You see the difference. There's my very complicated color palette when I add everything. Every single thing is in there. Love cerulean. Like I say, watch that phthalo. Look how black it looks even there. Watch it. Very scary. That's an expensive phthalo, turquoise. Yeah, be very careful when you're in the art store. Look at the prices before you go up to the counter. You'll be shocked.
Oh my
You
goodness.
you might get a $200 tube in your hand and have to ooh, back again. And if you're with your girlfriend, ooh,
Yeah.
oh, is this
Yeah,
guy?
there
Is,
are
is this guy one of those broke asses?
yeah, there are student grade paints.
Don't
A
touch
little
them.
bit,
Don't
don't touch them. I saw
don't
there
touch
was
them.
one that was I haven't touched oil in a while. I'm not big into it. It was like 19 something. It had like a number on it. I think it was Winsor Newton, maybe. I don't know. I can't
If it's Windsor
remember.
and if it's Windsor and Newton, it'd probably be okay.
Yeah,
But if you see really cheap paint, it's like a tin of beans. You buy a tin of beans, it's cheap. Half of it's tomato sauce. So
yeah,
let's say I got a student grade phthalo and I tried to thin that down with oils. It'll just be bits of soot just floating around because it'll never bind itself. It's just not the grade isn't good enough for you to
yeah,
thin it right down. So if I get a phthalo turquoise, it's going to cost me a fortune. I will never use that tube. I will have that tube to the grave because you only need a little dot, boink, and you can thin that as long as you like because the binder is so powerful because there's so much turquoise phthalo in there. That's its strength and its weakness because there's so much in there. You add it to another color and it's blue everywhere. So you can't go wrong with umbers, even student grade. So I don't want to diss the student grade, but do a brand.
yeah.
Don't go
It's all good information.
don't go off brand. It's my old adage is buy cheap, buy twice. So if you buy student grade, you're buying oil and a bit of paint. If you buy artist grade, you're buying paint with a bit of oil. And then you're going to add oil to it. And now the false economy of the cheap stuff, you're getting a better deal with the expensive stuff. The rub is you have to have the money. If you don't have the money, then you don't have the money. Simple as that. But, every coffee you're going to buy, I'm going to have water this time. And put two of those coffees aside and you got yourself a fellow cyan blue to last the rest of your life. I know that sounds very, very old school. Ooh, going in, oh, you're enough for a coffee. But basically, I
Yeah.
always thought like that. I always thought like that. I thought I'd be on the bones of my ass and I'd be looking at art supplies, not shoes, because it was important to me. I can have as many pairs of shoes as I want now. Who cares? When you're young, you can burden the storm. You can do anything you want when you're young. And don't let anybody tell you 30's old or 40's old or 50's old or 60's old. Don't let anybody tell you that. It's a load of old nonsense. That's all just grifters.
So,
Well, yeah, go ahead.
what advice would you have for your younger self?
Aha!
You
That I blew it again.
never get old.
But again, you never get old if you're an artist. I blew it again. I'll go back again. Yep. Go back to your 30s and say you're not old. Go back to your 40s and say you're not old. Also, let's add to it. Go back to your 30s and say you've got tons of time. You don't need to spend 4 hours a day burning yourself out. Take an hour. Take a walk. That usually means something else. Take a hike. Take a walk. I was always like that. Was I simple? I would draw, and then I'd go for a walk in the park. And then I come back and draw again, and my drawings were better. Whereas if I didn't do that, the drawing just got worse and worse and worse. So when you burn yourself out, what happens is you're just spending the rest of the day correcting mistakes that wouldn't have been there if you took a walk in the park. So take breaks. I mean, really, we don't have that kind of energy in our mind, no matter how young you are. The brain is really energetic. And they say you burn more energy from that thought process than anything else, because it takes so much to run that machine. And so for me, 2 hours, it's tons of time. Take a break, have a coffee. I'm Mr. Coffee Man now. I used to be Mr. Tea Man. But since when I went to America and I went, can I have some tea? It looked at me like I was from another planet.
What?
And they'd give me some perfume stuff. And I go, what's that? Is there flower? Is there flowers floating in this? They would put flowers. Spit it out. I said, I'll have a coffee. And I loved it. And I thought, this is like having dessert. I'm gonna have coffee all the time. So I'm Mr. Ooh, look at him, lock up your grand.
Whoa.
You know. And keep yourself fit as well. You know, if you didn't go for your walk in the park, you'll be this guy. And now you haven't got the energy to draw. So you gotta keep yourself fit too. And look how drawing helps. Look, there's scrawny me by comparison to, just a little bit of extra here and there, and you can blow that guy up to Conan. And Conan wasn't a bodybuilder, so it's perfect to always be painting. Look, I'm adding more and more all the time. He's getting stronger and stronger. He's getting the workout as I paint right there. It's all in there. Learn to draw. Yeah, there. Melanie, Rachel, back to my younger self. Learn to draw. And you might go, I can draw. No, you can't. You can't draw. I can. No, you can copy. Oh, right. You got something there, actually. I can draw cartoons. Yeah. Can you draw a person? Let me get a photo. Oh, you can't draw a person. Yeah, I can if I've got a photo. You can't draw a person without a photo would be the answer. And then it would click with me because I was always a good student. I go, you're absolutely right. I can't draw. I can't draw. Why didn't I see this? Go to light draw class. If you can't draw, go to light draw class. Draw from photos if you have to, but make sure that after the drawing of the photographs that you draw from imagination as well. But don't copy. Design. Learn what's underneath the photograph. Learn that. And you can see it everywhere. As I draw, I could talk forever, guys. I know you guys have got to get off. But you can see in anywhere that I draw, it's never a chore. Let me find something. Let's see. What have we not looked at? What's that one? Yeah, even that, it's always fresh right to the end. Look, it's always fresh because there's so much being left out that was in the photo and there's so much added. Look here how fresh it is here and there. Oh God, am I in trouble with YouTube? It's ridiculous. And you've already seen that. So it's always fresh if you learn how to draw. But if you're copying, it's never fresh. It's always a chore. Yes, you will burn out. You'll burn out if you copy. Almost immediately. If I had to copy something without designing while I'm doing it, I'd be burnt out right away. Learn to draw what's underneath. Learn to draw feet as structure. Learn to see what way these little toes are going. This one's coming at you. The other ones are going away from you. What? I thought they all were. Things like that. Do lots of gesture. Break it down until it's the simplest thing you've ever seen. And then go, if you can't do gesture and make it read as a figure, then you don't know how to design yet. You haven't learned how to design. By doing gesture and making it read as a form, that means you've already learned how it works. So simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Look how little is left out of that and it reads as a figure. If you're just copying photographs, that's impossible to do. And I tried it when I couldn't draw to make it look like I just made it up, and it always looked atrocious because there's too many giveaways. And I see it all the time. People trying to trace on top of something to make it look like it's a drawing. See it all the time. You just know exactly what's being done. There's no doubt a human hand did that. There's absolutely no doubt at all. It just has that love in it, that feel to it. And it's coming from these rhythms. Look at it coming out of nowhere. Isn't that what we all got into this for? Didn't we all get into this to go, I'm going to create something out of nothing. I'm going to love doing it too. And that's how it's done. You learn how to draw. And then all that process becomes subliminal. And then you learn to love shapes over and over and how to bend them into a different shape and variation by putting a straight on a curve instead of the opposite, things like that. And run it down the form. Find out, rather than draw bits, go all the way down to the bottom and then come back up again and holistically create this thing. You can see me do it all the time. It's the dance of creativity. It's all in there. All in my course on Saturday. This is from the course, actually, right here. And you can see it. So I'm creating this, and you can see how it's done from that. That's how I'm working there. But the course I do has photo reference. I just can't show it in here or other drawings in it. All right, so there we go. Great questions there. Thanks. All right, so is that it, or is there anything else? I can take another question or two, but I don't want to keep you two guys.
I think
Wanna be your
I don't see any
time
more
hog.
questions.
Yeah, I think this might be a good spot to
Yeah.
end it.
Okay. Okay, so like I say, guys, you can see Rachel and Melanie below the screen. Go and have a look at their stuff. It's great. It's fantastic. Follow them on Instagram. You can see a link to my course below the screen, and you can see a 20% off coupon till the end of the month, only for this YouTube channel, by the way. So if you're watching this, well, you can share it and show it to anyone, but it doesn't appear anywhere else. So I'm just making it exclusive to the art agents, just for a special. For anyone that's tuned in, there it is below the screen. And if you want to join me on Saturday, it'd be great to have you. It's the smallest class I've ever done. So you're going to have loads of one-on-one time because, my word is oak. I'm running the class, no matter how few people are in it. Like I said, it's a strange month. I don't know why it's not filling out like it usually does, but my loss is your gain. Like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa. So there you go. So it's a Cade Mila fellowship from me. No, that's a greeting. That's welcome in. Let's start again. It's a sláinte from me, good health, and from the Virginians.
See y'all later.
See y'all later.
See y'all later. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys.